Medical research done here in Colorado on everything from Alzheimer's to cancer is now at risk as the Trump administration tries to strip away tens of millions of dollars in federal funding. A judge just blocked President Trump's latest spending cuts this afternoon, as the administration signals it may start ignoring judicial rulings it doesn't like. Here's Mark Salinger with that.
Yeah, I'm mad. Absolutely. Who wouldn't be?
Don Elliman isn't mincing words. As the chancellor of the CU Anschutz Medical Campus, he knows the impact President Trump's cuts to NIH funding will have on Colorado.
I think eventually people will die because of it, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, American universities provide an enormous percentage of the medical research that goes on in this country.
On Friday, the Trump administration moved to cap funds used for medical research by limiting indirect funding of projects to 15%. The Colorado Attorney General's office estimates it would cost the state's three largest research universities at least $90 million in funding. Elliman says Anschutz could lose $74 million.
It'll gut it. I don't think, will it ruin it? I would hope not. But it certainly will have a major impact on the work that we do.
We would either have to cripple programs or go out and try to raise more money.
National Jewish Health estimates it would need to raise an additional $13 million if the cuts go through to avoid slashing research. Dr. Michael Salem is the CEO.
I have never seen anything like a memo coming out on Friday at 5 p.m. from the NIH saying that they were cutting indirect cost reimbursements by $4 billion, and it was going to be instituted Monday morning.
The way this decision was made is problematic from a legal standpoint and is not the way government should work. That's why we're in court.
Democratic Attorney General Phil Weiser, who's running for governor, filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration along with 21 other states. Tonight, a judge issued a temporary restraining order blocking the funding cuts for now.
And government can't just do things willy-nilly. There needs to be a reasonable justification.
In the middle of so much uncertainty, the fight is just beginning to save life-saving research.
And my hope is that that at some point sanity will prevail.
So the list of these impacts just goes on and on. Hospitals like Denver Health could also be feeling the impact. They tell me they currently have more than $23 million in awarded grants from NIH. If those grants are taken away, these hospitals will likely have to go out and find ways to raise the money themselves. Either that or the research that they're doing dies, Kyle.
So we talk about these indirect costs. What is that funding?
Yeah, so it's pretty much everything that allows them to do the research, everything from equipment, operations, maintenance, accounting, personnel, everything that allows them to actually come up with this groundbreaking research that saves lives right here in Colorado.
Mark Salinger, thank you. So we've explained here how the Trump administration's stated strategy involves flooding the zone with controversial actions, daring his political opponents to stop them all at once, and then racing ahead of potential court rulings that what the administration is doing could possibly be illegal. Today, a federal judge ruled that the Trump administration is not fully complying with an order delaying a freeze on trillions of dollars in federal funding. In President Trump's first week in office, he issued sweeping executive orders freezing federal grants and payments until they were satisfied that each lined up with his wishes. That caused chaos for nonprofits and social services, which began to prepare for a sudden loss in funding. Federal judge blocked all orders freezing spending from taking effect in a couple states last month, saying this is likely unconstitutional for the president to do it unilaterally. That judge said today the administration is still, against the court's order, freezing some spending, including environmental and energy efficiency projects in Colorado. Today, Colorado senators and Governor Jared Polis, which say all Democrats, estimated that the administration is wrongfully withholding more than $500 million from organizations in Colorado. National Jewish Health in Denver is joining the list of institutions falling in line with President Trump's demands that they end diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. By the time we learned of it this morning, National Jewish's DEI site had already been nuked. An archived version said their goal was to create an inclusive organization with a talented and diverse workforce to meet the diverse needs of patients. One of President Trump's first executive orders directed federal agencies to stop DEI efforts, and the administration is now pressuring private employers to do the same. National Jewish emailed today that they're proud of the work that they accomplished, but they will end their DEI efforts to comply with federal mandates. That hospital got nearly $25 million in federal funding last year, according to the Department of Health and Human Services. President Trump is promising to get tough on crime and to support law enforcement, with an exception for his supporters who violently attacked Capitol Police in 2021 in a failed attempt to keep him in power. The January 6 rioters, including about 20 Coloradans, got presidential pardons. And now it is becoming quite politically dangerous for Colorado's elected Republicans to speak out and say that beating law enforcement officers was wrong and should not be excused. Democrats at the state capitol today passed a resolution condemning the J6 violence at the nation's capital, criticizing President Trump for, quote, months of lies about widespread voter fraud. The resolution also says the pardons and the Trump administration's threats to fire FBI agents who investigated the riot both erode the rule of law. All 12 Senate Republicans voted against that today.
I have heard the mental contortions used to justify the insurrection and to justify those pardons. It was a protest. Maybe it was actually Antifa. The election really was stolen. Those are lies.
There are accusations here of a duly elected president, not only elected by the Electoral College majority, but by popular vote majority.
That's Republican Senator Mark Baisley, who you heard there. He once claimed without evidence that it appeared Antifa was behind the insurrection at the Capitol. That would have been weird if Trump pardoned Antifa, right? Baisley is expected to run for governor. The Colorado Republican Party is now targeting the state's only congressional Republican who spoke out against blanket pardons for rioters who attacked law enforcement. The party is accusing Congressman Jeff Hurd of being insufficiently loyal to President Trump. Last month, the freshman rep from the Western Slope said he was, quote, deeply disappointed by the pardons for those who assaulted law enforcement officers and for those who fought to stop the constitutional certification of the 2020 election. The other Colorado Republicans in Congress, including Congressman Gabe Evans, who worked in law enforcement, have fallen in line with Trump's pardons of those who attacked police officers. Hurd won his race for Congress in spite of the Colorado Republican Party. We should note the state party endorsed his primary opponent, Ron Hanks, who's an election denier who now serves as the state GOP's ballot election security chairman. The new leader of the Jefferson County Republican Party is a convicted felon who has talked openly about political violence, replacing ballots with bullets, saying, quote, "You can't argue with bullets." Rich Wyatt was elected GOP chair for Jefferson County over the weekend. Wyatt's former gun shop, Gunsmoke, was featured more than a decade ago on the reality TV show American Guns. Since then, Wyatt served time in prison for conspiracy to sell guns without a license and tax fraud. He tried and failed to get a pardon out of President Trump during his first term in office. So here's what Wyatt said during the Biden administration about coming political violence.
Almost time to switch from ballots to bullets, because that's what wins the hearts and minds, and there's no arguing with a bullet. You can argue about ballots, but you cannot argue with bullets.
Wyatt did not respond to my calls and texts today. He replaces Jeffco's former Republican chair, Nancy Pelosi, who upset the far right wing of her party when she criticized the state chairman for calling for the burning of all pride flags. The first round of mass deportations in Colorado last week were a disappointment to the ICE agents who carried out the raids and to the Fox News team embedded with them. Hi there, back here please. Both Fox News and ICE claimed without evidence that local media had tipped off migrants that the raids were coming. Fox said the raids were designed to round up 100 suspected gang members and got one among 30 total arrests. We've been asking since then how many of the people arrested were actually the violent criminals targeted, as opposed to people who simply couldn't show papers when ICE knocked at their door. Our Angeline McCall looks at the challenge of Trump's competing promises, targeting criminals and deporting tens of millions of people.
When ICE carries out its raids here in Colorado and across the country, they supposedly have a daily quota. The Washington Post reports senior officials laid out a goal of detaining at least 1,200 people per day.
What the Trump administration is trying to do is remove many, many, many times more people than has ever been done successfully in the country.
Deborah Fleischhaker is the former acting chief of staff for ICE under former President Biden, when ICE arrests were around 300 per day.
It requires people to focus on who can we arrest quickly rather than who is the most important person for us to arrest.
To get the kinds of numbers the administration is expecting, Fleischhaker says arrests would include both those with and without criminal pasts.
But it just doesn't stand to reason that you can arrest that many people around the country every day and be focused on the people with the worst criminal histories. You're going to be focused on the people who you can arrest most quickly.
The Trump administration has ordered the Pentagon to expand holding capacity to 30,000 at Guantanamo Bay. But the Trump administration doesn't even know if there are that many immigrants with violent pasts to meet that capacity.
You know, we are going through the process of identifying those that are on our radar. You know, the president committed during the campaign that he believed we needed to have mass deportation. We're going after those that have been the violent criminals perpetuating crimes in our communities, also those with final removal orders, and then we'll continue down the priority list.
And that process of going down a list, immigration experts say, would mean more operations and less targeting of criminals.
Going after people with serious criminal histories and not grandma makes a lot of sense. But I think that with those kinds of numbers, the sorts of distinctions are going to get lost.
We asked if ICE even has this capacity to keep up with this level of enforcement of up to 1,500, 1,400 people per day. Fleischhaker's response was probably not. But at the same time, we see the Trump administration exploring options to deputize other law enforcement agencies to do this work of immigration enforcement. Kyle.
Right, Angelina, at some level, this is very similar to what you see in local law enforcement, non-immigration, right? The people that you put into jail or prison, detention, are the worst of the worst because you can't possibly lock up everybody who has everything down to a civil violation. But if they're just rounding people up on civil violations, I guess where are they going to put people?
Right. I mean, of course, in the previous years, as we've seen from ICE enforcement, it has always been prioritizing violent criminals, people they want off the streets, right? That's who is in ICE detention. So it stands to see what that breakdown is actually in the ICE detention facilities, such as the one here in Aurora.
Angelina McCall, appreciate your continued work on this. Hey, I want to thank all of you for your support of the latest Word of Thanks microgiving project, raising funds for Project Safeguard. They're a nonprofit in the Denver metro area that provides free legal advocacy for survivors of domestic violence and human trafficking. They literally go and stand next to them in court to help them seek justice and safety. You raised more than $30,000 through one-time donations and monthly recurring gifts to the Word of Thanks Fund for Project Safeguard. Your microgiving, $5 at a time, has brought in more than $14 million for nonprofits in every corner of our state. If you know of a great nonprofit that could use a boost in uncertain times, email me, next@9news.com, or you can text NEXT, 303-871-1491.
Looking around, and everybody there was there to celebrate life.
It is a celebration of second chances. Coming to Denver for the first time. A look ahead to the Transplant Games. Next.
Hello, welcome back. I'm 9 News Weather Impact Team meteorologist Kathy Sabin, and we're issuing a 9 News Weather Impact alert starting tonight and continuing through Thursday. We are embracing and preparing for an Arctic front that is just now moving into northern Colorado. Note the current reading of 13 in Laramie and 22 in Denver after afternoon highs in the mid-30s. Tonight, we have occasional light snow showers and colder air, but tomorrow night into Wednesday, that's when we have 2 to 5 inches of snow. The really cold air settles in and we go under a winter weather advisory. A few clouds around the area, but not much to show you on radar yet. And that will be changing overnight tonight and tomorrow. At 2 o'clock tomorrow, Denver goes under a winter weather advisory for 2 to 6 inches of snow by Wednesday afternoon. A winter storm watch in effect tomorrow afternoon for the eastern plains for difficult travel and up to half a foot of snow. With the arrival of the front tonight, we'll go cloudy with flurries and occasional snow showers, but only a trace, less than a half an inch of accumulation expected. It's tomorrow afternoon and night that we get the heavier snow bands that continue through Wednesday morning. I think Wednesday morning could be the more difficult drive of this extended forecast. So overnight tonight, the accumulation is minimal and very light. It's tomorrow afternoon when things start to ramp up. Temperatures in the 20s now will drop into the teens, and your 7-day forecast includes a high of 23 tomorrow, a low of 6 tomorrow night, a high of 17 on Wednesday with a low of -2. Sunshine when you wake up Thursday, but a bitter cold start. Temperatures soar above freezing. Valentine's Day looks good with snow showers late Friday into early Saturday, and that storm could bring heavy snow to the mountains just in time for your weekend.
You know what they say, it's better to give than receive, but either will qualify an athlete for the Transplant Games, coming to Colorado for the first time. Hey, a reminder, you can also catch next nightly, streaming at 6 p.m. on 9 News Plus. And for everybody who says they can't stand watching this program, great news, it's now a podcast. Listen only. There are more than 100,000 Americans waiting for an organ transplant these days. Americans who have received life-saving transplants and Americans who have made those possible will come together in Denver next year for a unique event. Our Byron Reed has the story.
He was a man that was my hero as a child.
Making a simple decision can change another person's life.
He fought in the Gulf War, and I just remember sending him letters asking him how he was and if he was safe.
For Colorado resident Brandy Lowski, it was her cousin that changed hers.
I found out that my cousin was sick and he was in need of a kidney transplant.
It was that news that made her jump into action, but not in a way she expected.
I was a match for my cousin, but the size of my kidney was just smaller than they would have preferred for him. So we entered into the exchange program, meaning I would donate to a stranger and it would bump him up to the top of the list.
Brandy ended up donating one of her kidneys to a recipient in New York, but wanted to do more to bring awareness to organ donation.
We went to Salt Lake City in 2018, my husband and I was on Team Colorado.
She joined thousands of participants in the Transplant Games of America, a 6-day event that brings together transplant recipients, living donors, donor families, and healthcare professionals to participate in 20 friendly competitions.
I got very emotional at the start because I was just looking around and everybody there was there to celebrate life.
Recently, the city of Denver received some good news.
We are very excited to announce that the Denver has won the bid for the 2026 Transplant Games of America.
The hope is to bring awareness of organ donation and the dangers of obesity, diabetes, and high blood pressure to people living in our state.
Really try to create an effective but fun public awareness campaign just to warn everybody, but especially our friends of color, that please watch the weight, the diabetes, and the high blood pressure.
For donors like Brandy, the games are a celebration.
I'm a helper and I could help, so I wanted to.
And a chance to help change another person's life.
2 people are alive, and it makes me very emotional because, like, what a simple decision. We all can do that.
For Next, I'm Byron Reed.
Transplant Games travel the U.S. every 2 years. Denver will host in the summer of 2026. Special guest for feedback tonight, Next original producer, Carrie Leary, wave to the people. Thousands of you have emailed with this woman over the years. She went on to big things, is back visiting because she feels bad for us. It's good to see you. Feedback is next. Feedback from all over the state tonight. Liz in Yuma says, thank you for explaining all this Trump chaos in terms that non-political people can understand. Yeah, Liz, as we discussed here, right, the chaos is part of the strategy, so whether you support or oppose what President Trump is doing, it is important for us to break it down so it's understandable. You can get what's going on. Jeff in Littleton says, I think you should get into politics. I like the way you think. Jeff, I think I'd rather hit myself in the face with a hammer. Shirley writes, it's depressing when you have to use the phrase without evidence so many times in one broadcast. I get that, Shirley. It's going to be a lot more depressing when we can't or are afraid to say it. We'll see you next time.